Now they are. I just turned them on. You all set? I'd like to call the June 5th bid board meeting to order. We have acknowledgement of a quorum. I need to get a motion and a second on I can't even speak today.
Minutes.
The minutes from the May meeting.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Item 1, financial report. Adam.
All right, so under the revised budget, we have 96,248.40 with actual, sorry, pop-ups came up on here, 41,038.66. Total encumbrances of 28,428.01 with the available 26,781.73. One thing of note is that the only thing not showing up on there yet is the baskets from cleanup day.
Okay. Turn your mic on.
Motion to approve.
Turn your mic on.
Motion to approve the report.
We have a motion. We have a second.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item. Discussion of Bike Racks Riverwalk East update and Riverwalk West concept. Good morning, Craig.
Good morning, everybody. Lots of smiling faces this morning. I have 3 items in one, so we'll start with bike racks. Basically here to kind of take your temperature, get some feedback on the current bike racks that we have in downtown and see if there's interest in purchasing some more, placing some more out there. I believe we have 10 total. I think we have 9 on the street. I think we have 1 that we're still trying to find a good location for. There's been talk about adding a few more up on 6th or other locations, but it's kind of up to you folks. And then also branching over as we talk about the Riverwalk, looking at potentially putting some bike racks in there when that gets constructed. So right now there's been talk about maybe adding 4 more in the downtown, the bid area, and possibly up to 2 to 4 in the Riverwalk. But I kind of want to hear from you guys and see what you think and what direction we should go.
Why are we having a hard time finding a location for that last one? If we're looking for more.
Well, we had one in front of, and I'm going to forget what's the Lily store?
Mm-hmm.
There was one there. I think we could put one back there if there's interest. The hard part is that one was set just in the bricks, and a lot of times they don't hold real well, so we'd want to put some concrete down and do that. So that's certainly a possibility. We looked also down further south Main Street, but it just wasn't a good location for getting people past it. We do need some space, so we still can get pedestrians past the location. So that would be my recommendation, put one back there if that's of interest.
Where would the 4 go on 6th?
Adam, we had a little handwritten map that we started placing some down on, but I think what would be best is to take a little walk through there and find some good locations. We had one request, I think it was down on Chestnut and Main, but that was the spot that you really couldn't put it next to the building and keep it out of the sidewalk and that.
So my question about that one, because I was involved in that, and then I figured we'd wait till we come back to this. One of the things that came back from Public Works was the lady or the bid would have to go get an easement to put it on. It would work between the street and the sidewalk, but we were going to have to pay to do that easement and all that stuff. And my feeling is these bike racks are going on city property all over the place. Why does that location all of a sudden need to have the easement and the special improvement approval from the council and pay all that money when technically the bike racks end up going to the city anyway? They're going on city property. Why do we have to go through all those hoops for that location when we're not doing it for any other locations?
I have a guess, but Doug, do you remember that situation? I think it wasn't, I don't think it would be between the curb and the sidewalk. I think it was like up towards the building.
No, it was going between the curb and the sidewalk.
The way our municipal code is written, any permanent structure placed in the right-of-way needs a grant of privilege, which is approved by council. It's something I can discuss with Jay and Max to determine who's got ownership of this. It's basically for maintenance costs and gets recorded in the county deeds.
But aren't the bike racks within the Pocket Park and Settlers Park?
At this location, we would have to do a concrete, you could call it a carriage walk, and we take all the carriage walks to council for approval.
Okay.
I'm just going off of past.
No,
past
I
practice,
understand.
so It's a good question.
I'm concerned, though, that, we're putting them in locations that technically, I think, fall under that same thing, and here's somebody who's requesting it, has a legitimate need for it, and we're saying, well, if you want to do this, you're going to have to spend all this money to go get the permission from the city, where I know there's bike racks right now in right-of-ways that we didn't go through that process, so.
The other bike racks, we didn't install sidewalk or concrete or carriage walks, whatever you want to call it. They was existing sidewalk where they were installed.
Okay, so if we
So it's
go
a
to
little- it's a
areas
little
like,
different.
if we go to areas like Craig's talking about now, where we may need to put down concrete, are we gonna have to go through that process? If so, then I don't know that we wanna spend all that money to go through it, because I think it's $300 per location from what I recollect.
I would say if there's existing sidewalk, like all the other locations we had, then we wouldn't have to do that.
Okay, I guess I'd like, if you can look into that, because
I
she
can do that.
legitimately could use a bike rack, and I think it's in the bid. It's on the southern end of the bid, and if we can support that request, I think we should do it. And we have the bike rack, we can't find any place to put it.
Mike, can you speak to the concept or idea of potentially future improvements to the sidewalks in general with the pavers potentially? Or, are we using pavers forever down there? Is that the idea?
I don't think anybody knows what we're gonna do, because that hasn't been discussed. And where she's at, there's concrete, but the sidewalk's not wide enough to put a bike rack and then still have ADA access. So it needs to get pushed out into the right-of-way or that area, and then that's what stopped it.
I guess
So-
what I'm suggesting, Doug, is if there's a way that we can talk to the council or Max or whoever it might be regarding these options. Concrete pads really should be in place for all of those racks. I would suggest that they are very loose when they're installed onto the bricks, so we may consider just doing concrete pads all around as just a general thought. So maybe there's some options we might have there.
Okay.
Yeah, let's see what we
And-
can do to, if nothing else, use that one bike rack and then look at doing other spots, but
Yep. We can do that.
I think the main difference, that one was probably in a grass location on Chestnut and Main, so that was a little different. Yeah, we certainly can put that one in, consider the Lilies, I believe is what it's called. And then go from there. The question is, do you want us to also plan for 2 to 4 bike racks for the Riverwalk? We're planning for them, but would you want to see the same kind of bike rack in that location then?
Craig, I'm curious, and maybe somebody can catch me up. What was the history on the design of these bike racks, and where are they being produced, and what's the expense of them? And have you looked into different designs and different options?
Yes, yes, and yes.
Okay, I figured as much.
I want to say they're $500 to $600 a piece, somewhere in that range, $550 maybe. Ashley was the one that did all the research on them. I want to say they come out of Minnesota.
yeah, they're from Minnesota. Actually, what happened is I was out in Park City, Utah, and we were talking bike racks, and they have these all over the place there. So I took a picture of them and said, here's an idea, and that's what kind of stuck. If you don't put the West Bend in them, they're like $100 less. So adding the West Bend placard in them adds about $100 per bike rack. Otherwise, I think they're like $450. I don't know what they are in today's market, but back then it was like $100 to add that into it.
I think the bid board looked at a number of different types and looks. They liked that one the best, and then, as Mike said, we spent the extra money to put the City of West Bend logo inside the wheel. Otherwise, it comes as a plain-looking bike. There's plenty of colors. That was probably the most talked about topic.
Yeah, it comes
they have
in-
greens and blues and yellows and reds and whatever you want. And there was some talk about doing a variety of them, and then at that point, with the first 10, we decided to be consistent and make them all red so they stood out a little bit. I think they've been pretty popular. I see them used. Probably half of them are in concrete. That's the easy part, but some of them aren't, and that's what you're talking about, is trying to get them more stable. We're thinking of also then putting those across the river, along the Riverwalk, probably in the plaza areas, 1 or 2 in each plaza of the 2 plazas. But that's kind of where we're at. I don't know if that answers all your questions. But
No, that's good. Has there been any other businesses in the district that have requested bike racks in their vicinity?
Not at this point, no.
So are we looking to provide the bike rack specifically in the bid district only?
That's the only place we can.
That's the only place we can. Have you gotten any input from Bike Friendly?
yeah, they're interested. They're the ones that kind of researched this, I think, originally and picked out some locations. There are other bike racks throughout the community now, including here at City Hall with Moraine Park Technical College. There's a partnership. They're different. I think they made them red, and they're a little round circle, much smaller. So each business, I think there's one in front of Jeff Spirits. I might have seen that. And there's a few other ones in the community. But I think those businesses are actually helping fund them.
Craig, just how do you think that the design of those bike racks fits into what you're doing on the river? Is that
Yeah,
compatible?
I think, yeah, exactly. We're trying to keep the same look and feel as downtown, Old Settlers Park, West Pocket Park. So the benches, we're going to look at our Riverwalk committee will be looking at those for maybe potentially some different looking ones, or at least maybe not with backs. It could be a double-sided bench. But we're trying to keep the same look: trash cans, benches, bike racks throughout. So we think it makes sense, but it's, again, the kind of a question to the folks here.
Craig, is the East Side Riverwalk budget include already something for 2 to 4? Or are you asking for the bid to cover that?
We've put it in the budget. It really depends on how the project continues to happen. We also put benches in there. We think those will get donated, in the sense people want to put their names on it and pay for that. So it'd be nice if bid board could contribute 2 to 4 of them for the Riverwalk. I think that would help the project, but it's not a necessity.
I think just to circle back, but you were also asking about the board's interest or temperament with contributing some more for 6th. Sorry. I think that was discussed previously, and it sounded like back then there was definitely that was sort of the intention. Are you ready to? Are we able to purchase some more to get them over there?
I think if we have locations, I think
That's
we
the
ought to go
key,
for
right?
it.
Locations before purchasing. It's easy to
Yeah.
buy them.
I mean, if you have some specific locations, I also think looking at, like Park City, for example, and looking at the Vest Park, I don't know, like down in front of Mountain Outfitters, how much that one's used, but they have, 4, 5, 6 of them in some locations because they get the bike racks are overflowing. So I think maybe even look at the current locations, and if they're heavy use on them, maybe add another 1 or 2 to those locations as well, if there's room.
So I think we have about 4 good locations. We can look at adding a second one to some of these as well. I think that makes sense. But again, if you hear from businesses that specifically want them, we certainly can work with them.
Well, I know that when we did this last time, there was a pretty lengthy lead time on the order and design and shipment. So, thinking ahead, if we were to push this off another month, they definitely wouldn't be installed this summer. But guess I was just commenting that if we wanted to do this, maybe it makes sense to make a motion to order 6 or 8 of them.
Unfortunately, we can't, because this is just a discussion,
fair
not a
enough.
decision.
Fair enough.
And that's fine. We can, if you want, we can bring the specific locations back to the next meeting, take care of it as an agenda item, and vote on it then, if that makes sense.
Well, and if we have a current cost estimate,
Plus timing.
yeah.
Sure. So between Adam and I, we can get back on and find out the exact cost and how long it's going to take to come in, and can bring that back to your next meeting.
Okay.
All right? That's good. The next item, just quick updates on both Riverwalk East and Riverwalk West. And you can ask any questions. As you can see, there's been a little demolition of Riverwalk East. If you haven't seen that, then you have to get outside. Our crews, both Doug's, DPW, and Parks, did all the demo work. Utilities have been in there with AT&T and We Energies. And starting next Monday, Yankee Contractors should be in there to start doing their work. And they're the main contractor for the Riverwalk. So they'll be doing dredging in the river first, is their plan, and then to start working on the river wall. So you'll see they'll start being pulled out, and then new walls laid in. So they'll try and do all the river work. Actually, they'll be pounding in metal sheeting and making sure that's shored up. Then they'll be pulling out river walls, and we're going to try and keep the southern bridge in play as long as we can, because once we take it out, it's probably a 4 to 6 week absence of the bridge, of a bridge. So we're trying to make sure we do other things first and then line that up. So it'll be, we have to remove the bridge, then they have to remove the wall underneath it. They have to replace the wall back underneath the new wall. They have to do some work on the abutments and then place the bridge back on it. So we'll be certainly giving communication out to everybody in downtown when that's going to happen. So we know that affects pedestrians, affects deliveries and many other things. But so we're trying to condense that timeline as short as we can.
So one question with that is, because I've had some people asking me, with the work over there, how do they know as far as parking? Is there going to be anything sent out of, because I know the day they were taking the sidewalks out, I kind of saw people over there moving their cars because they weren't sure exactly what was going on. Is there going to be some communication on a weekly basis that's going to go out to the businesses to let them know what's happening, or what's the plan for that?
Yes, there's a general letter that should be going out to all the businesses to let them know the general construction timeline. And then I think as specifics happen, they'll be letting everybody know as well. Because they might say in the first letter, it might say construction starts June 11th, bridge potentially July 15th, but until they really get into it. So we want to narrow that focus or scope down. So they should be getting, each business owner in that whole area should be getting letters and information.
Okay, and then one last thing. I know there's one business in particular that has very sensitive alarm systems that when you're pounding into the riverbank, it would be nice to know ahead of time so that things can be addressed with that.
Nope, that's all, everything that has to be communicated. I understand, because when they do start pounding, you will feel it across the river.
When you did the bridge, I had crystal fall off my shelf, so if we could just be warned ahead of time, I would appreciate it.
We'll know better starting next Monday. They'll be mobilizing, like I said, they'll be doing dredging, which shouldn't affect it, but as soon as we know it, they're going to start pounding sheeting in or doing heavy construction, we'll let you know.
Okay, thanks.
Craig,
Any
just
other-
on another quick note, if I could ask about the MOA project and the parking lot over there, do you know timing as far as when that'll be available for parking again? Does anyone know?
Jay, do you know the timeline on that?
Mid-July is when they want to be done.
Mid-July, we're hearing. They're trying to move along as fast as they can, because I know they also have events lined up for mid-July and end of July. So that doesn't mean they'll be done with their project, but I think trying to,
The parking lot may take a little longer than the
but I assume they're trying to plant the trees as fast as they can, so.
Trying to get as much of the landscaping done before July 14th, which is a major fundraising event outside. And then we have Art Chalk Fest toward the end of the month, so as much as possible, trying to get done in July. But the final parking lot.
Okay.
All right, that's Riverwalk East, and then West, just to give you a little update on there, we have hired a design engineer firm, SEH, which is short Elliott Hendrickson, and they'll be working with us on the west side design. The Riverwalk Committee will be meeting next Monday, June 11th, to start meeting with them and talking about what's going to happen on the west side. And then we're looking probably in July at meetings with businesses downtown. So you'll all be invited. Some of them will be walking tours, kind of walking to see what we're dealing with. Some of them might be meeting and looking at some potential concepts or renderings that we could deal with. So that'll be happening July, August probably, meeting with folks downtown. So we're trying to move along on that. The idea would be for them to finish by probably early winter, midwinter with plans. So those are set up to go for future bidding. And I should go back to also the east side, just as far as timeline. So starting June 11th next week, substantial completion is supposed to be done in October, and then final early November. So if everything stays on track, and the water levels shouldn't affect it. They're really planning on doing sheeting all the way along. And so if the water comes up or goes down, it's not going to affect their timing in the project. So unless we had a huge flood, we should be okay that way as well. So that's kind of the quick updates. Happy to answer any other questions.
Thanks for coming.
All right, you bet, my pleasure.
Item 3, and Larry, I understand that was something you had asked to have put on the agenda, so do you want to?
Mike, the chief is willing to come for the next 2 items. He's just stuck at a meeting.
He's here.
Oh,
He's hiding in the back.
there's a poll. Great.
You wore my uniform, so you would.
It was brought to my attention that there's still a problem with finding parking for retailers downtown. And Kevin brought this up. Apparently, there's still owners and employees that burn up a lot of the space down there. And it was just asked if there was anything that we had in the pipeline that we could do to kind of remedy that situation.
So we had a discussion. I don't know if Kevin or the chief want to come and talk about any of it, but there was a discussion about maybe a year and a half ago or so of trying to come up with a plan. And the biggest issue, my understanding is that there's no way to enforce the ordinance that's in existence. I'll let Chief Moyler address kind of what we had talked about.
Well, where I remember the discussion was that I told you at the present ordinance, and if somebody wants to give me a whole lot of staff that I can dedicate just to that parking ordinance. But, you know, when you say there's owners and employees parking, to me, that's not a police issue. That's your issue up there that you need to regulate and somehow get cooperation between. From an enforcement standpoint, the present ordinance is pretty much unenforceable, and I can go through a number of problems, and trust me, we have tried. I've had more people throw tickets at me and argue with me when we have issued them, and it's very labor intensive to try to enforce. The reality is, when I left here last time, I thought the burden was actually, what do you want as far as enforcement? If you want to put in a 2-hour zone, then I heard nothing. I mean, those are enforceable things. If you want to put in meters, and nobody seems to want to do that. So if you don't want to do parking meters, or you don't want to do time zones, I don't know what we do to enforce. It's nice to say customer-only parking. I go by Menards early in the morning, and everybody is parked as far away from the front door as possible because that's what they order their employees to do. Unfortunately, the businesses downtown don't regulate their own employees, and they park all over. I just don't know how we enforce it. And I'm open to suggestions, but, you know.
This was not meant to be an indictment of the police department.
No, I understand. I understand.
You know, it was just, what can we do as a board to try and encourage people to, you know, maybe police their own employees?
That to me is the most important thing, but very seriously, if, you know, if somehow this ordinance would work, owners have to ensure that their employees are registering their vehicles. It's got to get to the police department. You've got to do away with all of the exceptions like, oh, I'm shopping that day, so at lunchtime I go out and I put a shopping sticker in my car and say, you know, I went to lunch and then I just left my car there for 3 hours after that. Because that was all the games that people were playing. And so it became, and that's what I brought up. So at a minimum, we got to get owners that want to ensure that their employees are registering their cars, and it's got to be all their cars. It can't be they register theirs and then they drive their wife's car to work. You've got to do away with the shopping permit exception, all of those things, and then, but that takes some cooperation from all the owners and employees. So if you still feel there's a problem, I'm a firm believer that you got to go back to either putting time zone or meters in. And I know that's not what people up there or the businesses want, but from an enforcement standpoint, that's the only practical way that we can enforce as far as unless somebody wants to tell me how else we do
Chief.
it.
I think there's two options. One is the meters, and one is no parking downtown at all, pedestrian traffic only, and that would solve it as well. But to put the police force under some sort of, obligation to try to figure out who to target or ticket, when to ticket, is impossible, as well as for anybody, any of us to decide the ethics of somebody else's business plan is really not our scope either, I don't believe. So short of putting in meters or eliminating parking altogether, we have nothing to, in my opinion, nothing to say about it.
I recall we had about 20,000 sitting in our budget for a long time about parking, and I think we finally ended with, let's reallocate that somewhere else because it's a pretty difficult issue to deal with. And we talked about just communicating every so often with business owners and people downtown of the ordinance existence, and that we should all self-police it. And that's kind of where we left it. We sent out a couple postcards, just kind of reminding people. I'm not sure when the last one is that went out. But I think we could still remind people that there is a parking issue, and people should, I try to certainly tell my employees, I pay for a lot of permits to not park downtown. Everybody just needs to do their part.
And if I can just follow up on what Tony said, I did say last time, and I'll reiterate, but then it gets into being, not too friendly to each other, but we will respond to complaints. I don't see him here today, but there's one business owner that will call us, and we will go and ticket in those cases. But that's what it leaves it. Then you not only you're self-policing, and I'm not so sure how much you want the police to get involved in your neighbor problems, more or less, but we will still, the ordinance is still there, and we'll respond to complaints, but outside of that, it's very difficult to enforce.
We had also talked about the bid paying for some of the parking spots in the parking lot by the post office, because there seems to be a lot of empty spots in there so that people would park there. And I still believe, because I am downtown, I do feel that it's a small percentage of the same exact people doing it all the time. And I think it's a very small percentage. It's a good problem to have. I'm not saying it's, awesome that we're, having this issue, but I do think that it's a small percentage of businesses that park their own vehicles there. And I do see them where it may only be for a short period of time. So maybe they are running errands or whatnot. But I know that at one point we did talk about paying for that parking lot back there. And I don't know where that went either.
Let's invest in more bike racks and make it no vehicle traffic downtown.
Good morning. I just want to comment on the parking. I talked to Larry about this. Again, there is the ordinance in place, and I feel that it's not the police's job or effective for them to, come down and police it. But it just comes down to personal responsibility. the bid is spending a ton of money to advertise, bring customers downtown, beautify it, make it a nice place, and then there's no parking for customers. Obviously, at night, we have great restaurants. That's where it really becomes an issue. But I see it all day long where there's constantly the same people parking over and over there, taking up spaces. There's no shortage of spaces in the downtown. There's shortage of spaces on Main Street for customers to get into retail businesses. That's the problem that exists. So again, like Tony had said, really it just takes the bid to send out a letter. Maybe it's quarterly, maybe it's biannually, basically just to remind businesses, hey, be a polite neighbor, park in a spot that's not taking up customer parking. That's the biggest issue. It's an easy problem to fix. It just comes down to personal responsibility of the business owners not to tie up parking, and that's it.
Kevin, if you don't mind,
Sure.
I'll respond to that. You do not park in front of your
I do not
business.
park in front. My employees do not park in front of my business.
You're a good steward for that, and we appreciate that. Do you find any value into the idea that people don't necessarily need to park right in front of the business that they're going to do business with, and the opportunity for them to walk past other businesses and create a active looking downtown?
Yeah, so just as an example to answer that question, the B&H parking lot, I did a little survey on Friday as far as available spots and parking. 400 yards from the Vest Pocket Park is the B&H parking lot. In that lot alone, or the Gale parking lot, excuse me, there's 131 available spaces. On Friday at noon, there was one car parked in there. Now, how beautiful is it to walk past the Eisenbahn, past the MOA with their new park, the Riverwalk that's getting redone? I mean, it's beautiful. Why wouldn't you want to walk 400 yards to get to the heart of downtown? That's 131 spaces right there. B&H, another spot, tons of parking. Auxiliary court, tons of parking. Nobody is utilizing this parking. It would be easy for employees and owners to park in those spots, take a short walk over. And I understand winter, rain, all that good stuff, right? We all have those days, or we have to drop something off. But the majority of the time, people can walk. It's healthy, it's active. And to Mike's point, it basically creates that connectivity that we're trying to, establish with pedestrian, walking and thoroughfares.
I think that right now, and we talked about this in the past, if we incorporate a map of the available spots with our mailer, I think that would help people understand how you could solve this problem if you chose to. And maybe that's where we ought to start again.
I think that's a good idea too, yeah, because I think.
I would agree, and people don't know where they can park and not park. That's the big issue. There is no shortage of parking in the downtown. It's just a matter of informing them, educating them. Obviously, there's employee turnover, so doing this every once in a while to inform the new employees where to park. I mean, it's a no-brainer.
We've been also working on signage, better signage for some of the parking and just wayfinding signs. That's going to be part of this Riverwalk restoration project. So potentially, just labeling the lots better is also beneficial to everybody involved, just for information.
Maybe also with sending out the mailer, if we know who is violating it continuously, maybe we drop it off personally, that letter with the
Well, that's
map.
my concern, is that maybe it's not getting to the right person, or somebody
Right.
is just, tossing the letter, not making notice of it because they don't even realize that their employees are doing it.
I actually developed a windshield stuffer, I'll call it. So I have a person who manages my property or building, and so he kind of keeps an eye out. And if there's a continual violator, he just puts a notice on their windshield. We kind of have a reputation down by me that people know I don't want them parking there unless they're a customer. So right in front of my place, I have 20,000 square feet and 4 spaces to park. We know who the violators are, and we pretty much remind them on their windshield, and they tend to go away. I think it's not space that's a problem, it's people.
So you want to do a letter?
It's what we agreed last time, about every 6 months, we'd send out a postcard
Adam,
or a
do you
letter
wanna-
reminding people.
Send out a letter?
I think, Adam, just as a reminder, it'd be great to do a map and highlight all those available parking locations.
Okay, item 4. Peggy, I understand this was one of your requests, so we'll let you start it off. And
Oh, I just had concerns. I just felt that the downtown is looking so beautiful, but there's times you go down there and there's just kind of like crap everywhere and a lot of cigarette butts. And I just didn't know who is cleaning up the downtown, how often it gets cleaned up, all of that. That was it.
the businesses are supposed to clean up in front of their business.
So if there's a bunch of cigarette butts in front, like on the sidewalk or in the actual, like,
On the
In the
on the
road.
sidewalk, I don't know what goes on in the
no,
road.
it's in the road.
Public Works does a monthly sweeping downtown.
Monthly.
You may not all see us because we start at 2 a.m. because of all the parked cars. We have one gentleman that goes around with a leaf blower and blows out all the corners where usually all the cigarette butts collect. And then the street sweeper follows behind him an hour later, so he gets a head start. We do that monthly downtown. And, you know, I'll quote Tony, I think it's to help, it's going to be a self-policing in front of your property. I mean, you know, we don't have the manpower to do this weekly, so monthly has been our practice through the summer. And the last time we were down there was between the spring cleanup and the parade. So,
I just think, I'm afraid there's going to be more with all the events coming in during the summertime that, you know, there's going to be that many more people there, that many more people leaving garbage, that many people not throwing their stuff away.
Well, and I guess the question I have with that is, just because I have experience with the Christmas parade, we had a situation the second year that I was involved with the parade where people were handing out literature during the parade, then it was all over the street. And we got notified that as the permit holder and as the event sponsor, it was our responsibility to clean that mess up. And so consequently, the parade committee said no more literature is going to be allowed to be handed out during the parade. So where does that begin and end? I have no idea. But, you know, that's what we were told as the parade people. It's your responsibility to clean up after your event. So I know there's a lot going on and you can't control the people with their cigarettes, but.
Mike, can we make a suggestion to have more cigarette butt receptacles? There is restaurants and bars in particular that don't even have anything outside of their facility, and really those two types of businesses are really, I think, the key for the cigarette butts in particular.
We have two restaurant people here. What are I know you have them.
Yeah, we have them.
I think you have them too, don't you, or not?
We
I don't
flower
know.
pots that turn into.
Oh, okay.
Right, but potentially even a universal looking item that, you know, maybe we don't put it on the responsibility of the business owner, but maybe the bid board would consider, like bike racks, placing some of these things sporadically in the downtown, like we do garbage cans. It certainly is not going to solve the problem. I realize that people have an agenda of their own sometimes, but the suggestion of having a receptacle is certainly better than not having an option.
I like the idea. I think the cigarette butt issue is big. If you ever walk any of the sidewalks downtown, it's a mess down there.
Can we ban smoking?
I won't go there.
I didn't go there.
Can we address that with the parking issue? Because every time there's an event, I clean up around my property, and I maintain the entire Veterans Park, so I think I have a big project So I think other people who have a small frontage could maintain that. Maybe we just have to remind people that's in their court.
I don't disagree. I go out once a month with a hose and hose our entire building down. I see Brazen Head, because they're right next to me. They're out every morning sweeping up their cigarette butts. So I'm not opposed to getting receptacles, but I also think that maybe
Educate
in the businesses that have the smokers maybe should be
reminded
stepping forward and
Well,
doing their
smokers do walk. You know, they don't just sit outside of a location. That's how cigarette butts get in front of everybody's business downtown, is because people walk with them and then just toss them wherever they are when they're finished. If it was just strictly limited to restaurants and bars, then that would be an easy problem to solve, but that's just not specifically the case, I don't believe, all the time. So that's why the thought of just having some receptacles out and about, not just specifically required in front of certain businesses, would maybe be an option to consider.
I know one option, maybe sort of meeting in the middle, because we already have multiple trash receptacles all scattered throughout downtown. I'm almost positive that those receptacles have a top that can be, right now it's an open lid, but we could just get a special top that has a cigarette butt sort of container on the top, just as a thought.
You know, along those lines, Brian, you know, potentially just the idea of recreating what our garbage receptacles look like in general. I hear it every time I hold my music festival at Regner Park, and every time I go to Regner Park, there's not recyclable containers at the park. There's not recyclable containers downtown.
Yes, there are.
Where?
In Vest Park and in Old Settlers Park, we put them in.
In the park? Okay. But as I'm walking along Main Street.
No, we did it kind of as a test. And one of the questions I was going to ask is, are they being used?
They are being used.
Okay.
for recyclables or trash.
Commingled.
Okay. A nice balance, right?
Well, Adam, I mean, so we can get this going, because I think that it makes some sense. Why don't you, when you're looking at the cost of bike racks, see if there's something out there that is pleasingly, has a good look to it. I guess my thoughts is if you put it on the restaurants and the bars and say, here, go get them, we're going to have this whole mishmash of look versus if we decide we want to do it, depending upon the cost, we can get some consistency like we've done with the garbage cans and bike racks and benches and all that kind of good stuff and have continuity. So if you could look at getting some prices, that would be great.
Yep, I already have the magazines in my office. They send them all the time, so we're good there, yeah.
Okay.
We'll have it at the next meeting.
Like, it surprises me that some place like Park City wouldn't have a really nice looking receptacle.
They don't smoke.
At least not cigarettes.
Yeah, at least not cigarettes. I can look when I'm out there, but I honestly, I don't remember seeing any. There's like, literally on their main street, there's got to be 200 bike racks. They put them out on the street and do banks of bike racks, but I don't ever remember seeing cigarette receptacles. So, on that note, we'll move on to item 5, which is Roots and Branches wanted to give us an update on budget and where they're at with downtown. Good morning.
Good morning, everybody. I want to give you a little report of what's been happening this year, which is enormous. I think last year with the city getting involved and holding the special cleanup, planting, mulching day that we've had, we've really made an improvement of downtown, and this year most especially, and we'll get into that in just a minute. But I want to thank all of you on the bid board for your support for the projects that we're able to do. And I want to thank the city, Jay especially, who's been instrumental in making this happen starting last year. And the city, as you all know, some years ago kind of abandoned those gardens downtown because there was nothing in the budget. And Roots and Branches kind of tried to hold it together by having volunteers and some minimal money for plants and so forth to make it look as good as we could, and we felt very, very good about it from time to time. But this has made the difference, and you'll know why in just a minute. But thank you, Jay, and the Park and Rec Department and Public Works and Adam and Julie, who were really instrumental behind this whole thing. We are mere partners in making it all happen. And what we were able to accomplish this year was that we put in a lot more perennials instead of annuals, so the cost goes down every year, and we have a more stable plants downtown. In especially Old Settlers Park, we put a lot of hydrangeas there, and in that little planter where the path goes down the Vest Pocket Park going down towards Moa. We have some hydrangeas there. And then just in keeping with, as Craig mentioned, in keeping with what's happening over on the Riverwalk and with Moa. And this year we did a special project with the North Berm, which was just so overgrown and looking terrible for so many years. And Larry, you've had to look at it every day, I guess, that I sort of got familiar with that huge Mogo pine, but that was totally eliminated and everything was cleaned out of there, and we have a very nice ornamental tree there, and lots of perennials, lots of these hydrangeas again to carry through that theme. And so we were able to accomplish a lot that way. One of the other things that happened this year that was extraordinary is that Julie practically took it upon herself to make sure all these downtown businesses got involved. Because you can send a letter, which we do, and say this is your responsibility and we invite you to participate. We give you free annuals and you can get the perennials cheaper or whatever. But she actually encouraged a lot of businesses downtown to get involved. And so thus the price went up, but not extremely so. A lot of them got involved with planting out in front of their businesses. We just hope that's the beginning of what they will take on as their own responsibility in the future. So what I wanted to do was just give you the initial, I think it got passed around to you, the initial proposal that we made to you at the beginning of earlier in the year. The baskets, are the baskets up? I've been out for a couple of days. Did anybody see any baskets up downtown? They should have been up by Memorial Day. So I don't have a bill yet for those. I'm on my way to a meeting at MOA and I'm going to see what's been done down there. But the baskets should be up and probably about the same price of the $1,900. And then you see the little arrow that I drew from annuals and perennials, and then from the other line item of annuals and perennials, there was $731 worth of annuals. So people that got involved in planting in front of their businesses, that's how much that cost. And then the $1,263, a lot of that was the perennials that we moved into Old Settlers Park, the tree and the perennials up on the north end, and some perennials in the Vest Pocket Park area. Two things have not been done to my knowledge, but I'm going downtown today to see for sure. There are two planters in front of the Riverside Brewery and Apple Barrel on the corner, and they haven't. They're not filled yet either, Wayne. Right? It's very disappointing because they should have been. So that adds up to be $4,295. Now we projected, as you can see, almost $3,000, and you. Actually came forward with a couple more $1,000 if we needed it to really do it up well downtown. And we didn't use all of that, probably about $1,200 of that, but that's the total that we we spent. And we have 200 more that we will need to spend for the 2 planters that haven't gotten in yet, and some soil amendments and fertilizers throughout the summer. So that's how it kind of stacked up against the proposal. And again, I just am really excited about what's happening downtown, because, you know, it maybe seems like a small thing to do to make your downtown attractive, but it's one of the things that we can do to keep the downtown alive. And I think that's an interest that all of you have. So we're happy to be a partner. Thank you. Any questions?
No, the only question, I think with this extra, first off, thank you for everything you guys have done down there. It looks great.
We're a partner with everybody.
The question I have is, with this, we're still within the budget because we gave you extra money, right? So we don't need to allocate any more money, even though you went over what you projected.
Right.
We had extra money set aside in case you needed it.
We projected about $3,000, which is that total amount without water. Because the water, by the way, and you should know this, that we have volunteers all over town watering these things. Volunteers watering at the North Berm that gets water from you, Larry. People watering in Old Settlers Park, the perennials, the new perennials that we've planted there, as well as the vines along the wall. And we have a lot of our volunteers that are working and maintaining a lot of these downtown. So we do save a lot of money on the watering, because the watering one year, if you remember alone, was about $5,000 to hire the water out. So $3,000, to answer your question finally here, $3,000 is what we projected, and you offered another $2,000, and so we're really under that.
Okay. And fabulous. It looks great.
Could you make next year's weather a little better? That was an awful day.
It was. I think it's planning. We'll have to
Yeah,
plan.
I didn't need water that day.
So
I know.
the
was there.
the other question that I have that's totally goes into 6 months from now, on that North Berm, something to think about, if there's any way that Roots and Branches could figure out how to put in a Christmas tree.
A Christmas tree?
I think it would be kind of cool. I don't know if there's electricity in there, however, but that could maybe,
There is electricity,
I think,
I'm pretty sure.
be kind of interesting to put in there. The other thought I had was in Old Settlers Park. Maybe we try to start a tradition like you have in Milwaukee, where someone donates a tree to the city and we bring in a giant Christmas tree and put it in there.
The Downtown Association is going to be doing that this year, I believe.
A big tree?
A big tree along with several trees throughout the park, doing a tree decorating contest kind of thing.
Okay, that's cool.
Well, those are great ideas.
Yeah.
We can certainly put those on the agenda for thinking about.
Yeah, I mean, if we could get a 40-foot tree in the middle of Old Settlers Park for a month, that would be cool.
That would look wonderful.
Not sure how Craig would support it with all the guy wires, but that would be his story to worry about. Okay, thank you for everything. Last item, which I believe is Adam, just continued Commons project discussion.
Not much to update. We have a meeting set for June 27th. On that day, the Commons group is going to come down, and we're going to meet at MOA and just kind of just map out what we're going to have to do leading up to the project. So I'll be able to come back with that in July. I'll say at every meeting now, thanks again to MOA for donating the space and the time and their efforts.
Great, thanks. So there's nothing else on the agenda, just future items. Anybody want to add, or you can add later like we typically do? It's up to you guys if there's anything pressing right now. Obviously, the bike racks. We'll have to have a discussion and decision.
Is the next meeting July 3rd? Or did we move that?
We have it for July 10th, just because we're not going to be open.
Well, we'll be here. Where are you guys?
Golfing.
Okay.
Do we want to review a draft of that letter that we want to send out for cleaning up the street and parking and
I think we were just gonna let Adam put together a letter and send it.
It already exists. We
Yeah.
sent it out twice, I thought.
Just add a map to it?
Yeah, just add a map and send it out. Yeah, I think he can.
Okay.
December 16th is the last, when we sent the last one.
Okay. Anything else? Otherwise, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thanks, everybody.